Test number 3 of subject-verb agreement. Question number 1. Focus on the strategy of finding the subject and the verb and identifying modifiers, okay? My subject in this question is, at the beginning, sculpted boulders. So boulders. Found at Lipinski verb is a modifier. An example of the earliest monumental art known from Central and Western Europe is also a modifier. And right after the comma we have the verb includes. This pattern is very common. Subject, modifiers, and then the verb, right? So, boulders is plural, includes is singular. I cannot pick includes. If we do a split, eliminate number 1, leave number 2, leave number 3, are and includes. Includes is wrong, eliminate number 4. And including is not a verb, it's a modifier, it's an additive word that gives examples of the noun before the comma. In this case is maybe Central and Western Europe. So if you say Central and Western Europe including 15 figures, it means that Europe includes 15 figures, and that doesn't make any sense. So remember, including is used to give examples of the noun before the comma. So we're between number 2 and number 3. And okay, if you notice the beginning, they say an example versus examples versus earliest of monumental art. Since they're telling us that the boulders are examples of the art, I should keep that meaning. I cannot say that the boulders are earliest of monumental art. No, they are examples, plural. They are examples. So eliminate number 3. Keep the intention of the author. B is the best choice. Okay. If you have any question, you can email me at verbal@gmail.com. Question number 2. Again, focus on the subject and the verb. Identify modifiers. In this particular case, you're starting with a subordinated clause because it's a subordinator. Because of the sun, it's a subordinated clause, okay? Because of the sun, then you have a modifier between commas. And after that comma here, you need a subject and a verb. Because of the sun, subject, verb. Here you have comma so, which is a connector, and that's wrong. Okay, which is 400 divided by 1. Okay, I forgot about this part. Another thing is that when you see the structure but also, it needs to go along with not only X, but also Y. Okay, so number 1 is wrong. In number 2, you have the sun, get rid of the modifier between commas. The sun is. The sun is also 400 times farther away from the earth. So the sun and the moon have the same apparent size in the sky. Okay, you have a subject and a verb, and B is okay. Let's leave it for now. Take a look at number 3. The sun and the moon, that's my subject. Have is the verb. They have the same apparent size in the sky. Because the sun, okay, so you have the subordinator because. And again, after a subordinator, you can have a subordinated subject because the sun, and then you need a verb for the sun. Because the sun, get rid of the which, and also, that's wrong, because the sun and also is incomplete. Notice that there are 2 possible structures with because. You can have because of plus a noun, or because subject plus verb. Okay. In number 4, you have long modifier at the beginning. 400 times larger than the moon and 400 times farther away from Earth. And that's describing the sun. The sun is my subject. Has is the verb. So the sun has the same apparent size in the sky as the moon's. And this possessive is wrong. It should be the moon. Why? Because you want to compare the sun to the moon. Eliminate number 4. And the last one starts with the modifier 400 times larger than the moon and also 400 times farther away from Earth. That should describe the subject. You cannot have the connector so here. It should be the sun. Also, be careful with wordy structures. For example, and also, okay, is usually redundant because they both give the idea of addition, okay? And also, you could use but also, okay? And if you have any question, feel free to email me at verbal@gmail.com. Question number 3. Find the subject and the verb. This question begins with the subject, each of Hemingway's wives. So each of Hemingway's wives is singular. Each of whatever is always singular. Then you have a modifier between dashes. Okay, you have Hallie Richardson, Pauline Pfeiffer, Martha Gellhorn, and Mary Welsh. Okay, get rid of that modifier. And then you have the verb were. So they were strong and interesting women. That's wrong because each is singular and were is plural. Okay. In number 2, the subject is at the beginning. Hallie Richardson, Pauline Pfeiffer, Martha Gellhorn, and Mary Welsh. That's the subject. And the verb is after the modifier. Okay, here this is a modifier. Each of the Hemingway's wives is a modifier. Where is my verb? Okay, so the subject and the verb do agree number. However, I cannot say each of them wives because each is singular and wives is plural. Eliminate number 2. In number 3, my subject is wives, Hemingway's wives. We get rid of the modifier between dashes. Where is my verb? The wives were. Okay, so the subject and the verb do agree in number. They were all strong and interesting women is perfect. Let's leave number 3. In number 4, you have strong and interesting women. And that seems to be the subject. Strong and interesting women. You have a modifier between dashes. And then you need a verb. And you have a subject, a modifier, and you need a verb right after this dash, right after this one. However, you have each a wife of Hemingway, and then the verb was, and that's wrong. The verb was is singular, and it doesn't agree with the subject women. Eliminate number 4. The last one is strong and interesting women. That's my subject. Then you have a modifier between dashes, okay? And be careful, get rid of this modifier, and then you need a verb right after the dash. Strong and interesting women were. However, in this structure you have every one of Hemingway's wives were, like an independent clause. And that's wrong. You need a subject for women here. And he is incorrect. So we keep number 3, which is very simple. Okay, the wives were, period. If you have any question, email me to verbal@gmail.com. Number 4. Okay, in this question, everything is underlined. Remember that you need to focus on the subject and the verb. Be careful with modifiers. So here you're starting with the development of a new jumbo rocket that is expected to carry the United States into its next phase of space exploration, will be able to deliver a heavier load of instruments into orbit than the space shuttle and at a lower cost. Okay, so you have the development of a new jumbo rocket. That's basically my subject. Remember that the nucleus of the subject is the development of a new jumbo rocket is a prepositional phrase. Okay, so the development, then you have another modifier here that is expected to carry the United States into its next phase of space exploration. Okay, that's a relative clause modifier. And the verb is will be able to deliver. Now be careful here. Think about this. What will be able to deliver a heavier load of instruments? Okay, that's the key. What will be able to deliver a heavier load of instruments into orbit? Is it the development? Or is it the newly developed jumbo rocket? Okay, only the rocket is able to deliver a heavier load of instruments. So you can eliminate number 1, 2, and 3. You have to be between these two answer choices. Now, another difference between those two is basically at the end. Get rid of the which modifier, which is expected to carry the US, blah blah blah. The verb is will be able to deliver. You have the same thing in number 5, will be able to deliver. And okay, the difference between them is at the end. And at a lower cost versus and to cost less. Okay? Now, number 4 says that the jumbo rocket will be able to deliver instruments and at a lower cost, versus number 5 that says that the jumbo rocket will be able to deliver and to cost. Okay? Oh, number 5 is wrong because it is telling you that the rocket will be able to deliver and will be able to cost. However, the rocket cannot be able to cost less because that's not an ability of an object. An object cannot have the ability to cost. Okay? And we keep number 4. And be careful. And at the lower cost is a special type of modifier. When you have a comma and plus a prepositional phrase such as at a lower cost, then the prepositional phrase is an adverbial clause that describes the main verb. In other words, at a lower cost is describing will be able to deliver. How? At a lower cost. Okay? If you have any question about that, please email me to verbal@gmail.com. Question number 5. Focus on the subject and the verb. El Niño is my subject. You have a modifier, the periodic abnormal warming of the sea surface of Peru, modifier. Then you have a phenomenon in which changes, that's another modifier. A phenomenon in which changes in the ocean and atmosphere combine, allowing the warm weather that has accumulated. Okay, that whole thing is a long modifier, but you have a subject and you don't have a main verb. El Niño what? Okay, now take a look at the splits. El Niño, a phenomenon, a phenomenon, a phenomenon, is a phenomenon. Okay, finally I see a verb. El Niño is a phenomenon. Okay, be careful because a lot of times you have a subject and you're missing a verb. Okay, also be careful with in which versus where. And that's an important difference because where must be used to describe physical locations. I cannot say a phenomenon where because a phenomenon is not a place. So eliminate number 5. You keep the 4th one. Okay? So also 1, 2, and 3 are wrong because they don't have a main verb. If you have any question about this, please email me at verbal@gmail.com. Okay, thank you. Number 6. Here, my subject seems to be at the beginning. Bluegrass musician Bill Monroe. So that's my subject. Then you have a modifier whose repertory, views on musical collaboration, and vocal style were influential on generations of blue-class artists. And then you have was. So the musician was also an inspiration to many musicians. That included Elvis Presley and Jerry Garcia, whose music differs significantly from his own. Okay? Be careful with that included. You cannot have a comma before a that clause modifier. A that clause modifier needs to describe the noun before the comma. Another thing is that in the GMAT, you must avoid using that to describe people. We prefer who rather than that. This is wrong. Now this structure is also a bit wordy. It's wordy when it says were influential on, and then was also an inspiration to. We have other versions that are much simpler. Were influential on, influenced, was influential to, was influential to, were an influence on. Okay. Also in the end you have was also an inspiration versus inspired, or was also inspirational, also inspired, was also an inspiration. If you notice, answer choice number 2 is more concise. It uses one word, influence, rather than were influential on, which is 3 words. It also uses the concise expression inspired rather than was an inspiration. And B was the best option. It was very simple, direct, concise. In addition, you are using whose. You're not using that anymore to refer to musicians. That was wrong. Musicians that is wrong. You could use musicians who, okay? Or, like in the right answer, including, which is used to give an example of the noun before the comma. Okay, we saw that in another question. Including gives an example of musicians. Many musicians, including Elvis Presley and Jerry Garcia. Eliminate all the other answer choices simply because they are not concise. Okay? Those are wrong. Remember that, in general, if you are between a verb and a noun, we prefer the noun. Okay? There is a common pattern in the GMAT that in some books is called the Van principle. Van, like this. Oh, sorry. It is called the Van principle. We prefer verbs, then adjectives or adverbs, and finally nouns. Okay, so verbs have priority to adjectives or adverbs, and adjectives or adverbs have priority to nouns. For instance, influential is an adjective, but I prefer the verb influenced. An inspiration is a noun, but I prefer the verb inspire. Okay? If you have any question about this, you can email me to verbal@gmail.com. Question 7. Focus on the subject and the verb. You're starting with a subordinator here, while. Okay? So, while many of the dinosaur fossils found recently in northeast China seem to provide evidence of the kinship between dinosaurs and birds, that whole thing is a subordinated construction. So the subject is right after the comma, which is the wealth. Okay? The wealth of enigmatic fossils seem. The wealth seem. And that's wrong because the wealth Okay, the wealth is singular and seem is plural. I cannot use seem. The wealth seems. Okay, it's one of those three. More likely to inflame, more likely at this stage to inflame, more likely that it will. Okay, there is an idiom with likely. Likely needs an infinitive. So you're likely to, okay? Likely to inflame. I cannot be likely that it will inflame. The last one is not idiomatic. You should be between number 3 and number 4. Okay. So you have a slight difference between 3 and 4. The position of at this stage. Okay. Seems more likely to inflame debates on the origin of birds at this stage rather than settle them, versus seems more likely at this stage to inflame debates over the origin of birds rather than to settle them. Okay, so be careful with the position of the prepositional phrase at this stage. Also, there is a parallelism with, be careful with rather than versus than. If you have the word more, you need than. More likely to inflame than. I cannot say more likely rather than. The word rather is wrong. Okay, I cannot say more rather than. The proper idiom is more than alone. So you can eliminate number 3 and we keep number 4. If you have any question, you can email me to verbal@gmail.com. Thank you. Number 8. Again, the subject and the verb, even if they're not underlined, okay, it is important that you recognize them. That way, you'll understand the structure of the sentence and you'll be able to spot mistakes faster. Okay? So, Cajuns is my subject. Cajuns speak. That's the main verb. Cajuns speak a dialect brought to southern Louisiana by the 4,000 Acadians who migrated there in 1755. So that's the first sentence. It's not underlined. Then you have a semicolon. And remember that semicolons need to connect two main clauses. You have their language. That's my second subject. Their language is. That's the verb. Their language is basically 17th century French, to which has been added English, Spanish, and Italian words. Now, when you see a verb, ask yourself, what is its subject? What has been added? Well, the answer is right there. English, Spanish, and Italian words. So words have, not has, been added. You can eliminate all the singular verbs. Has been is wrong because words is plural. Is wrong because that's singular, to which English, Spanish, and Italian words have been added. Okay, have been added is a plural verb. That sounds okay. With English, Spanish, and Italian words having been. Okay, that's wrong. Having been is a modifier here, not a verb. And in addition, that's redundant, and in addition together, they imply the same idea, the same meaning. And are added, it's wrong. They have been added from the past up to the present. The best answer choice is number 3. Also, to which needs to describe 17th century French. Okay, so you have French to which words have been added. basically. Number 3 is the best answer. So if you have any question, feel free to email me at verbal@gmail.com. Question number 9. Focus on finding the subject and the verb. Also, identify modifiers. Here you have last week, that's a modifier of time. Local shrimpers, subject. Held, main verb. They held a news conference to take some credit for the resurgence of the rare Camp's riddle turtle, comma. Saying that their compliance. Okay, be careful when you have a verb or a verbal form plus the subordinator that. When that happens, you will have a subordinated subject, which is the noun after the word that. So saying that their compliance, that is the subject, their compliance, and then you have a prepositional phrase, which is a modifier. Their compliance with laws requiring that turtles exclude their devices be and shrimp nets, that whole thing is a prepositional phrase modifier. So their compliance, protect. Protect is the verb of their compliance. So again, saying that, subject verb. The word that will subordinate a subject and a verb. Be careful with those modifiers, okay? Especially prepositional phrases. So their compliance is singular and protect is plural. Take a look at the split at the end. You have protect, is protecting, protect, are protecting, is protecting. I need a singular verb, so the only possible choices are number 2 and number 5. You can eliminate 1, 3, and 4. Okay, so which one is better? Their compliance with laws requiring, laws to require. That's basically the only difference between them. The present participle requiring simply describes the laws requiring. Okay? The infinitive to require implies a purpose or an objective. So the objective of the laws would be to require the devices, and that changes the meaning again. It doesn't make sense to use an infinitive to describe the laws. And for that reason, we will keep number 2. Keep the intention of the author. Remember that. If you have any question, email me to verbal@gmail.com. Question number 10. Focus on the subject and the verb. Be careful with modifiers. You're starting with rock samples, that's my subject, taken from the remains of an asteroid about twice the size of the 6-mile-wide asteroid that eradicated dinosaurs. Oh, that's a long modifier. So the samples has been dated. Samples has is wrong because samples is plural and has is singular. So eliminate number 1 and number 2. You need have. Okay? Have been dated to be as being at. And this becomes an idiomatic expression. You date, when you refer to a time period, we need date at. Okay? Date at is the proper idiom in this particular context, so the best answer is E. The samples have been dated at 3.47 billion years old and thus are evidence of the earliest known asteroid impact on Earth. Okay, perfect. If you have any questions, let me know. You can email me at verbal@gmail.com. Question 11. Again, focus on the subject and the verb. As usually begins a modifier as a result of the groundbreaking work of Barbara McClintock. That's my... Actually, this is as a result of, it's a very common idiomatic expression. Yeah, it is a modifier, and my subject is many scientists. Scientists now believe, that's my verb, and again, be careful if you have a verb plus a that. They believe that all of the information, okay, After that, you would have a subordinated subject. All of the information is the subject, encoded in 50,000 to 100,000 of the different genes found in a human cell is a modifier. So the information, okay, all of the information is singular. When you have all, the subject follows the preposition of. Okay, so this is a bit unusual. It breaks the norm. However, be careful when you have the following words: some, any, none, all, and more or most. When you have those as subjects, the subject, the true subject, is what follows the preposition of. In this case, the information. So all of the information are contained. The usual mistake. I cannot use the plural are. Eliminate 1, 2, and 3. You need the singular is. All of the information is contained. Another difference is 50 to 100,000 of human cells. Different genes is contained in merely, versus the 50 to 100,000 different genes found in a human cell is contained in a mere 3%. So take a look at those differences. Should you use merely or mere? Should I use the article the, or maybe the possessive cells? Okay, well, this is simpler than it seems. Since you're referring to a specific set of genes, you need the 50 to 100,000 different genes found in a human cell. It's not any genes, it's a specific set. And in addition, if you have merely versus mere, remember that merely is an adverb, while mere is an adjective. And you want to describe the noun phrase 3% of the cell's DNA. Okay, 3% of the cell's DNA is a noun phrase. It's like a noun. So I need to use the adjective mere to describe the noun phrase 3% of the cell's DNA. I cannot say merely 3% of the cell's DNA. That's wrong, because adverbs cannot describe nouns. Okay, only adjectives describe nouns. Okay, if you have any question, email me at verbal@gmail.com. Question number 12. During the early years of European settlement on a continent that was viewed as wilderness by the newcomers, that whole thing is a modifier. And my subject is right after the comma. Native Americans, then a modifier, intimately knowing the ecology of the land, and then you need a verb. Native Americans were a help. And that's awkward. They were a help? No, they helped. Okay, they were a help in the rescuing of. That's also not idiomatic. And let's take a look at some differences. Were a help versus Native Americans knew. Then number 3 you have Native Americans helped. In number 4 you have Native Americans having intimate knowledge. Native Americans helped, and Native Americans helped. Okay, instead of using the worthy and awkward expression were a help, you want the verb helped, right? And we eliminate number 1. In number 2 you have that Native Americans knew the ecology, and this enabled them. What is this referring to? Be careful when you see the word this or this in the GMAT, because those words need to modify a noun right in front of them. For example, this fact, or this knowledge. Okay? This enables them to help in the rescue of. That's also awkward. You could fix it and say to help rescue, period. That's wrong. In number 3, you have Native Americans. Get rid of the modifier. Helped to rescue. Okay, that's simple, concise, and direct. Native Americans, with their intimate knowledge of the ecology of the land, helped to rescue. Okay, that sounds perfect. The subject and the verb is very clear. In the 4th one, you have during the early years. So right after the comma, the subject should be Native Americans, not having or knowing. Those two are wrong. Okay. Also, help the rescue. It's not idiomatic. You help to rescue. Okay. In the last one, the problem is that you have the modifier during the early years, blah blah blah, and then you have another modifier, knowing intimately the ecology of the land. No. After the modifier, you should have the subject and then the verb. Okay? That's you can see the best structure, the preferred structure. So number 3 is the best choice. If you have any question about this, again, send me an email to verbal@gmadudes.com. Question 13. Okay, so my subject here is at the beginning, the period. The period, then you have a modifier. When the great painted caves at Lascaux and Altamira were occupied by Upper Paleolithic people, has been, the period has been established by carbon-14 dating, comma. But, okay, after comma, but, okay, if you have a main clause before comma, but, you need a main clause right after. So here you have what is much more difficult to determine are. Okay, that's wrong, because what is much more difficult to determine is a special subject. It's called a relative clause subject. And relative clause subjects are always singular. I cannot say what is much more difficult to determine are. You need is instead. Well, first the period has. That's good in number 1 and 2. You cannot use have or are because the period is singular. So between 1 and 2, we eliminate 1 because I need the singular verb is. What is much more difficult to determine is my subject, is my verb. Okay? Remember that the subjects that start with what or that are singular. Okay? If you have any question, you can email me at verbal@gmadudes.com. Question 14. Remember that what clauses or relative clauses are singular. Here you have what brought the automobile company back from the verge of bankruptcy shortly after the Second World War. That's a subject. And was is my verb. So what brought was. I don't see anything wrong with that. The thing that brought is worthy. Why use 4 words when you can use 2, right? That's wrong. That which is not idiomatic. Okay, which needs to be between commas, and also that which cannot be a subject. Bringing, but bringing gives me the idea of an ongoing process, something that is happening. Bringing was doesn't agree logically. You need what brought in the past. And the last one uses the present perfect has brought. Be careful, it looks like a past tense, but it's not a past tense, it's a present perfect. And that's wrong. I need something compatible with the main verb was. Okay, so the best answer here is number 1. What brought was. Simple as that. If you have any question, feel free to email me at verbal@gmail.com.